Namo Phat. Thanks for joining me for a daily practice check-in. Listen, listen, listen. This beautiful sound calls us back to our true home. The third mindfulness training. Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct, I vow to cultivate responsibility and learn ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and society. I'm determined not to engage in sexual relations without love and a long-term commitment. To preserve the happiness of myself and others, I'm determined to respect my commitments and the commitments of others. I will do everything in my power to protect children from sexual abuse and to prevent couples and families from being broken by sexual misconduct. For our Dharma lessons, we're reading Ajahn Munindo's book, Unexpected Freedom. We're in a chapter on a question of identity with today's section, Identity and Personality. Last week, a young couple who lived nearby brought their 9-week-old daughter to the monastery for a blessing. Observing this small being, there didn't appear to be any substantial sense of a somebody. There wasn't yet any accumulated perception of an individual differentiated from its parents or the sensory world. Child development theorists tell us that it takes about 7 years for such a differentiation to fully take place. This happens to correspond to the age of the youngest arahant recorded in the scriptures. Maybe before 7 years of age, there isn't enough of a somebody for transformation of the mistaken identification with personality to take place. Learning to abide in awareness beyond limited personal identity doesn't mean that we are trying to get rid of our personalities. That the Buddha taught anatta, no self, doesn't mean we are supposed to feel guilty for having personal desires or embarrassed about who we are. We all have personalities. We had to work hard to attain one. Buddhism is telling us that personality is not all that it appears to be. But this doesn't mean we have to start apologizing for our experience of being a particular somebody. We need to consider this carefully. The precious pointing to reality that constitutes Dharma teachings becomes dangerous when turned into doctrine. But by this I mean that the concept of anatta should be understood as just a concept. The experience to which it points is something completely different. Our personality is what we experience ourselves as, and we welcome and value it. The last thing to do is attempt to get rid of it. Should we be foolish enough to try, and some of us have been that foolish, then a lot of our personality goes underground. When it's not out in the open, but relegated to the shadowy underworld, all that is dark in our character grows larger. Sometimes we get hints of its underground activity, and if we are sensitive to its rumblings, we would be wise to welcome it back into the light of day before it grows into too much of a monster. We can be sure it will come to light sometime. Perhaps it might wait until we have become well known. One day somebody might criticize us in public, and full-blown repressed vengefulness raises its ugly head for everyone to see. If our practice is not driven by willful ambition, caution will guide us, and we will learn from the lessons of life naturally. There will be no need to try to get rid of what we don't like about ourselves. From his perspective of perfectly unobstructed vision, the Buddha pointed out the delusive nature of the feeling of I. From our perspective, we take up this invitation to inquire, and remembering whatever degree of awareness we have access to, we examine the very dynamic of personality. We find that what we thought of as ourself is in fact a dynamic process. This realization can be shocking. If we are not prepared, the shock might trigger an even more tenacious grasping, which would be regrettable. But if through our patient and consistent surrender to right training, we have been made ready, then when we do see through the apparent nature of personality, awakening can be deepened. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be at peace. Namo Adida Phat. Thanks so much for joining me today.